Hey guys, we're down here at the Lake Guntersville State Park at the Beach Pavilion. It is beautiful down here. What we're doing is we're going to cover some aquatic plant growth that is in Lake Guntersville. Mr. Stephen Turner with TVA will be addressing that, and at 1 o'clock we're going to start, and he's going to have a meeting on it that should last for about an hour. So we just want to give you a prelude into what's happening today at GTO. Thanks a lot. Hey guys, we're down here at the State Park, and we have got Troy Goldsby with us with Aqua Services here in Guntersville, correct?
Yeah, that's correct, yes.
He's fixing to tell y'all the difference when he's spraying, when he ain't spraying, when he's surveying. He's gonna tell you the whole 9 yards. So y'all please listen to this close so you won't say TVA spraying the whole lake. So Mr. Goldsby, take it with you.
Yeah, so we want to make sure we clear up any misconceptions about what we're doing when we're out on the water. So there's a lot of times when you'll see an airboat that may be just surveying, and those boats may be moving kind of slow through the shallow waters, checking where vegetation may or may not be that we need to control. But those boats will typically just do a linear pass. When we're actually applying product, first of all, up here on this placard, there will be something that says TVA Contractor. There should be a yellow light flashing, and if we're actually spraying, we're going to be moving in and out of docks at a very, let's call it a slow pace, maybe 4 to 5 miles per hour. We're going to do a circuitous route around everything that we're trying to control, and then if we move to another spot, we shut that herbicide off, and we may move at, say, 30 miles per hour. If you ever see us moving that fast, we are not applying product. We can't do it that fast, it doesn't work that fast, and even if you see the fan kicking up water in the back, we may be kicking out a mist out of the back, but that is not herbicide. That's simply the water that we're picking up off from the fan in the back. So if you see us spraying, we are simply moving through docks, through sometimes open areas if it's like a boat ramp area or a swim beach area, but we're going to be moving very methodically, back and forth passes, moving at a 5 mile per hour pace, maybe a 4 mile per hour pace. And you'll notice that our light's flashing. If the light isn't flashing, then we're not spraying. So yeah, that's basically how we do this. It's fairly simple. TVA boats will typically survey for us, but they do that at a very slow pace. It's not a very back and forth kind of circuitous pace. They kind of move through the water column checking for vegetation. They may stop and throw a drag chain. When we come out to do the work, we're not throwing drag chains, but we are moving very cautiously through docks and through the areas that we've been targeted to treat. We control those, then we move on at a faster pace. So we're never controlling vegetation at a very fast pace.
So the bottom line here is you are controlling the grass. You're not trying to kill it all.
No, eradication is not an attempt here. On Guntersville Lake, eradication is not something we can do. I mean, we have come to the conclusion for years now that Guntersville is always going to have vegetation. It always will have vegetation, and all we're trying to do is control it around certain areas in the reservoir so that homeowners have access, or people that are using access areas have access to the main water body. That's the only thing we've ever tried to accomplish on Guntersville Reservoir.
Well, that sounds like a winner. You heard it from the man that does it right here. You got Stephen Turner in the background. You got Troy Goldsby right here.
It's all we've ever done.
Between them two, you're going to get it done, ain't you?
That's right, yeah.
That sounds good. Troy, thank you so much.
Good to meet you. Yes, sir.
Appreciate it. Nice to meet you. Stephen, I want you just to let them know what's fixing to happen.
Yeah, what we're doing, we started every year we do a workshop. We call it Aquatic Plant Management Workshop. We provide it for the state agencies, including the Alabama Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. We've got attendees from TWRA, Mississippi, several of the DCNRs in our area that are in the TVA area. What we do is we provide education for aquatic plant management for these folks. They have to have CEUs, continuing education units, to maintain their licenses. And even the state biologists, if they do any kind of recommendation for herbicides use, anything like that, they have to have a license for them to be able to recommend it. So they have to maintain those licenses. And so we provide this so that it's a free way for them to get those points to maintain it. And what we do is basically a day and a half workshop. So we've had yesterday afternoon, we had classroom work. This morning we had classroom work, and they're all eating lunch right now. They're about to head down this way. The afternoon session today is we've got set up here at the park a plant ID session. We've got some professors here from Mississippi State and other places that'll be doing the plant ID, showing them how to ID different plants and all, aquatic plants and all that. Then we'll look at some of the management methods we use. We've got a little we-do harvester over here they're going to look at, and they'll be bringing a treatment airboat in here in a minute they can look at too. And then we'll do a lake tour this afternoon. You know, we'll take them out for a couple hours. We'll ride around, show them, you know, a lot of these guys, the ones that are local here, they know what we have on Guntersville, you know, the problems we have and stuff and the amount of plants. But a lot of these Tennessee folks and Mississippi folks and the South Alabama folks, they just don't see this. And Guntersville is really a unique situation with all the aquatic plants. So it's a really good place for trainings like this. So we really enjoy having it here, getting them the points and you know, we just provide it for free to them, to the state agencies, you know, the public agencies. Now we don't do that for any private agencies or anything like that. It's just whether it's fisheries group, you know, extension service folks, all those guys, they're welcome to come to it. Everything's paid for. And it's a partnership with TVA and the AERF, which is the Aquatic Ecosystem Restoration Foundation. We're the primary sponsors of the event. Then we have a ton of other sponsors, you know, that help us out. Mid-South Aquatic Plant Management Society, the National Aquatic Plant Management Society. Gosh, there's a list. I can use CPRO Corporation, Alligare, several that just help put it on, you know, so we can provide it to them for free at no cost to the state. So that's what we try to do, is just help out, you know, and get that education out there, because it's a unique field and it's kind of a small field. I mean, when you look on Guntersville, there's a lot of aquatic plants. So it's a big deal here.
I can't believe it.
Yeah, but when you get out on these other lakes, a lot of times it's not as big an issue. So we like to bring them here so they can really see it. But because it's not as big an issue, there's just not as many people dealing with it. Now right here, there's a lot of people dealing with it in this area, but we bring them all in and kind of network, and everybody gets to meet everybody, and I think that helps a lot, you know, going forward. So.
And what about controlling? Do y'all control all of these plants that you got out here?
No,
I know there's a lot of talk about the fishing and the homeowners.
Yeah, we've got probably 30 species out here, which is, most of them came from Guntersville. Maybe a couple that have came from South Alabama and stuff that we don't have here. The majority of them we don't control. The majority of them are natives. They're supposed to be here. We don't mess with them, you know. Primarily the ones we're controlling are the problem plants, you know, which, I mean, they're problems in certain situations. They're not a problem overall, but you know, the hydrillas, the eelgrass, milfoils, all those are the ones that impact a lot of the public use areas and stuff. And so we do manage those, but otherwise you know, most of these plants you're going to see are just plants you're going to see out there that we're not messing with them.
And y'all try to pinpoint the places of recreation. Correct? Or boat launches.
Yeah, what we do, for TVA, we just treat around what we call public access areas, which would be a boat ramp or anything that's a developed shoreline that the public can access. Now people will say, oh, my private dock, it's public, you know, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's not. You don't want everybody coming down and going out on your dock, you know. So it's technically private as far as we're concerned when it comes to the treatments, you know. So what we're trying to do is take care of the public access areas where there's boat ramps, parks. Like here at the state park, we treat it to maintain. You know, this swim beach, if we didn't treat it, it wouldn't be usable this time of year, you know. So we take care of it for them to make sure it stays, but it's public access.
But you're not going to go out on the river channel and kill all the grass on the river channel.
No, we're not going to mess with that.
So now, back in some pockets, you will take care of.
Now, in pockets, if they're developed, you know, sometimes we'll do some treatments. But then the only other situation where we might treat away from a developed shoreline is if it's a new invasive non-native plant that can be bad, whether it's like water hyacinth is one of those, Cuban bulrush is one of them. So if you see an airboat out there that's a TVA airboat and they're back in a pocket and there's no houses around and they're out in the weed mountain, they're spraying, and you think 99% of the time they're going to be with a handgun. You're going to see them up there spraying, you know. And if you see them, what they're doing is they're hitting particular spots. And it'll be like if it's Cuban bulrush growing in the weeds, or if it's, you know, water hyscinth. There's several different species that we have and they pop up like that. And and salvinia, that's another big one that's just started coming in, is salvinia. But those plants can be a big problem if we don't do something and probably they're eventually going to anyway. I mean, there's just no way. That's what a lot of people don't understand. There's no way to eradicate these plants. Once they get here, they're here. You know, we just try to beat them down as long as we can. You know, to maintain it as long as we can. So A lot of them, like the salvinias, the hyacinth, they don't overwinter well, but we may go 4 or 5 years without the winter killing them. But usually, at least every 5 or 6 years, we'll have a cold enough winter to kill them off. But in the meantime, we have seen the hyacinth, especially at times, at 1 year we had, it's probably about 8 years ago now, we had almost 1,000 acres of hyacinth on Guntersville.
Good
A lot
gracious.
of people wouldn't believe that, but
Wow.
we did.
Yeah.
And so we treated a lot of it. We also, that winter, we were able to we had a really cold winter, that following winter. And we were able to pull the lake down about 1.5 feet, which is about the maximum we can pull it down, and hold it down during about a 2-week really cold spell. And we knocked nearly all of it out.
Well, good.
But we've still got a lot of it. We've probably still got probably it's scattered everywhere, but it's probably not more than 10 acres on the whole lake, but it's just, you'll have little patches of it here, there, and everywhere.
So guys, if y'all are out there fishing and here comes a TVA boat in there and they're spraying with a wand, they're not spraying all the grass. They're pinpointing a certain species of grass.
Yep.
So don't get your panties in the wad when you see them in there and just get the rumor started that they're killing all the grass, because they're not.
Yep. Yeah, because if you'll watch them, if you'll just take a little time and watch them, I know a lot of people video them because I see the videos that wind up on Facebook. But if you watch them for a little bit, they'll hit one spot and then they'll move on to another spot, and do that kind of stuff, because they're not back there just spraying willy-nilly, spraying the whole thing. They're hitting those specific plants. And like I say, 90% of the time now, it's either hyacinth, salvinia, or Cuban bulrush, one of those 3 things. So, but those are bad invasive plants, and if you don't believe us on that, go down on the 10-tom. You'll see them down there. You'll see it. You'll see hyacinth, Cuban bulrush, how it's impacted some of those reservoirs down there where you can't, blocked up the dams and the, and the locks, so, and that's where a lot of our stuff comes from, we think, is barge traffic that comes up through there. So we're just trying to maintain what we got.
Trying to get a head start on everything.
We try on that stuff.
That's right.
It's like with the eelgrass, that was one of the big issues with eelgrass. It being very similar to the native species, we thought it was the native, so we didn't really try to we didn't jump on it when it started, because we thought, well, that's the native, we don't want to mess with it. That's a perfect example of us not messing with native plants. Because we didn't want to mess with it, it was a native, or we thought it was. Turned out it wasn't. So, but now we've started doing a lot more treatment on it, but we were behind the 8 ball all of a sudden because it took off, and once we got the DNA work done and everything and realized it wasn't a native, then we had a lot bigger problem to deal with. So,
and I think y'all have made progress with
I think it's a lot better this year.
I do too. I've heard a lot of fishermen talking about seeing more milfoil and hydrilla.
Right. There's certain areas that are still pretty bad, but as a whole, I think the reservoir's in a lot better shape as far as eelgrass is concerned. So
I'd be willing to say that TVA is on the fisherman's side, and they're on the recreational side, and they're on the homeowner's side. They're in a bad place because they're trying to please everybody. So how about just give them a little patience, let them take care of their business, do their research, and Lake Guntersville is going to be as good as it is, and I'm going to say it's going to get better and better. What about you?
Sounds good to me. I hope you're right. But
Stephen,
I do believe it will.
Thank you so much for your time.
I appreciate y'all coming out and enjoy the plants and get some pictures and let everybody know, if we want to put some pictures of different plants up so they can understand the differences. Because if you look over here, you'll see that there's a lot of plants that look like hydrilla. There's a lot of plants that look like milfoil, and that sort of thing. So we can get some pictures and put them out there and let people know.
There's a gentleman showed me 3 completely different plants, and he put them together.
You couldn't tell the difference?
I couldn't tell the difference.
Yep.
So I just don't know what I'm looking for. So guys, y'all understand this is great for TVA to do this. And all the plants, fish don't like to stay around, right?
Yep. Yeah, some of them are more conducive to the fish getting around them, like they like eelgrass, but eelgrass is really thick, and they prefer, I believe, just anecdotally looking at it, those fisheries biologists may tell you different, but just from looking at it, they honestly prefer like milfoil stuff. It's a lot more open underneath. It's more stemmy, a little more open. They can find food, all that kind of stuff. The eelgrass, they'll get in it, but the only way they can really find food around it's at the edges.
Or in the holes.
Or in the holes that are in it.
Exactly.
So it's just too thick for them to. They can get up in it, but they can't really feed. Once they get up in there, so they more of a hiding spot. Where with hydrilla and milfoils, they can get out there and feed in it, and actually find fish. That's why everybody likes flipping the milfoil and the hydrilla.
They love the 2 species together.
Oh yeah.
Is what I've heard.
Yep.
Now the floating eelgrass, that's just something how does it get to floating?
Well, as it grows and establishes over the year, the reason we've seen less floating this year is we're starting to see more hydrilla and milfoil growing in it. What happens when it's what we call monospecific, which means there's a big area of it that's just the eelgrass and nothing else growing in it. It'll actually grow, and it has these runners on the bottom. And when it's almost like monkey grass, but airplane plants, a lot of you wives may have hanging in the house that hangs down. It'll have these runners and different plants on it. Well, when these colonies, when they grow together and hit each other, those runners, instead of trying to run over each other, they'll just turn up, and they'll hang up in the water column. And it's actually it's a natural dispersal tactic to spread it. So when it hangs up in the water column, all it takes is a little bit of agitation to break those little plants off. And then they'll float down somewhere else and they'll root up and start another colony.
I got you.
So that's where the floating stuff comes from. So as we've seen more milfoil and hydrilla get mixed in with it, we don't have them hitting as much. So we don't see, if you go out there in those monospecific colonies, that's just the eelgrass, this time of year especially, if you start driving through it, you'll see these areas where it looks like it's just turning loose. But what it's done, it's grown together and it just grows up.
Okay.
So the plants are just loose, hanging up. And the first boat that goes through there, or have a good windy day, it just breaks a lot of it loose, and you get these big mats that float down.
Right, exactly. So, and that's just where the wind is.
Yep.
That's just part of it.
And this year we've got still running 8 harvesters out there trying to pick up as much of the floating stuff as we can. So we're still maintaining that.
Y'all are doing a fantastic job, and it's a lot better than it was 2 years ago.
We appreciate y'all. Y'all, like I say, I appreciate it, and I appreciate y'all coming out and enjoying the day.
Well, thank you so much, and good luck with your seminar.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
It.
That is 3 different species. Everybody see that? 3 completely different species. I know at least one person in here can identify them. So, what am I holding? Anybody? Which one's hydrilla? You tell me. What we got, Dustin? Which one's hydrilla? That's hydrilla. Dustin gets a gold star. What do we got left? Parrot's feather. Nope, not parrot's feather. Right hand is Agarria. Agarria. Right hand's Agarria. What's the last one here? Elodea. That's right, Elodea. So, 3 species. They look very similar. In the field, you actually have to pull them up, look at leaf margins, look at leaf counts. Elodea is the easy one. It's the native of the 3. The other 2 are invasive. Elodea religiously will have 3 leaves per node. No more, no less. So you got to pull it apart, look at a node. If it's 3, you need to look at multiple nodes, by the way, not just one. Multiple nodes, everyone has 3. You're dealing with Elodea. Hydrilla. Right there, it has 3 to 8 leaves per node, depending on the biotype. There are 3 biotypes in the country, monoecious, dioecious, and this new one they're calling Connecticut River Hydrilla. 3 to 8 leaves per node. If you take your hand at the bottom of the plant and run it down, it'll have a little bit of a light sandpaper feel, almost like 400 grit, something real light. You're feeling the teeth on the bottom of those leaves on the midvein. Okay? Those teeth are not present on Agarria. Agarria has a much larger stature to it, a lot wider, but it has that smoother feel going down it. And it will also have variable leaf count. But if you've got one that's just really robust like this, you're dealing with Agarria. Agarria is also called Brazilian Elodea or African Elodea or African Agarria. They're all talking about the same plant, Agarria densa, which is what this is. It's not as common in the southeast as some of these other 2 are, but it is present. I do know my MDWFP guys, y'all got it on Ross Barnett for sure and a few other sites. Moving back to our natives, this is coontail. Coontail has forked leaves and a lot of teeth on it. You see the very distinct nodes, then a kind of a gap you can see the light through, then more node, then gap, then node. That's coontail. You'll see it growing in almost all of our southern reservoirs. I see it all the time. One thing to note about coontail is that even though it's a submerged plant, it is not a rooted plant. It doesn't have true roots. It's got little anchoring hooks that will hold it in sediment, so it kind of sits still, but it pulls all of its nutrients right out of the water column. So if you get a big flow, you can flush that coontail, it'll be gone, you don't know where it went, it'll pop up somewhere else. That's because it's not truly rooted. But it can form some pretty nasty populations when it wants. What's that? Okay. We have 2 milfoils here. We have parrot's feather in my left hand, which is invasive, and we have Eurasian milfoil, which is also invasive. One's from South America, one's from Eurasia. Parrot's feather, right here, Myriophyllum aquaticum. We are starting to see it more and more often in a lot of our southern reservoirs. It's been here for a long, long time, decades, but it's just now starting to become problematic in a few of these. It actually has emergent foliage. This green right here sticks up out of the water column, where Eurasian milfoil will not. All of its foliage stops right at the water line. Okay, so if you got some sticking up out of the water, it's probably parrot's feather. There are a few native milfoils that will stick up out of the water, but they look completely different. The most notable one would be variable leaf milfoil. The leaves are much more robust, kind of wide, look like little paddles sticking off the side. If it looks like that, it's parrot's feather. All of the milfoils are very susceptible to auxinic herbicide technology. So 2,4-D, fluoroperoxifin, any of those work very well on these. One thing to note, any of these plants, this one, the parrot feather, the aegarias and those, every node on the plant is a propagule. So anywhere you see leaves coming off, that plant can put down roots at that point. If that touches new habitat somewhere, that node is all it takes to start a brand new colony. So things like mechanical control, they're great for immediate biomass reduction if you got to cut a boat lane, but they are also notorious for spitting out propagules of these things that can drift off site. So if you're going to use mechanical control, probably want to set up something like a containment boom. They make AIS boom that has a net that hangs in the water column that can help trap those fragments so you can scoop them out to the side with a net or a rake or something later on. This guy here, I hope y'all know this one. Anybody know that? Come on, Tin Tom. It's all over the place. It is Potamogeton. Yep, American pondweed, Potamogeton nodosus. It's a native plant. It can be problematic, but that's very rare. Typically, this is like prized fisheries habitat. Grows real well. It has submerged leaves on the stem. You see a few like that. But then it has these larger floating leaves that you'll see on the surface. Very distinct when you see it on top of the water. You'll see these floating leaves sticking there. We have a lot in the Tin Tom that came up on its own, which is great because we didn't have to go establish it. All right, here's our eelgrass that you heard Stephen talking about. This is probably the poster child for aquatic plant problems right now, definitely in the TVA and other parts of the country. It's all over. We're having problems down in Florida as well. Long tape-like leaves. One of its nicknames besides eelgrass is tape grass. This, as long as this leaf is, this is a small plant. I've seen these leaves get 6 to 8 feet long, sometimes longer, depending on the species. This is the invasive hybrid. Some folks call it rockstar. It actually has a scientific name associated with it called Vallisneria pseudo-rosulata. That's what my team has been working with, that name, just because it takes a lot of the ambiguity out. Everybody knows exactly what we're dealing with. It's really rare for a hybrid to have an assigned scientific name. That does not happen very often, but they did it with this one. We're pretty sure it came in through the horticulture world, through the aquarium trade, through a release, and then came, we're not sure where it was released, but it is established in Florida and up here in the TVA system. This stuff displaced hydrilla in a matter of years in the system. I think most hydrilla habitat is now converted to eelgrass habitat. And it's really problematic. Aside from this one, the hybrid, there are 4 other taxa in the country. There's 2 natives, Vallisneria americana, which is more northern, Vallisneria neotropicalis, which is more in the southern states. Now, that's not a hard, fast rule. There's a few little pockets outside of their known ranges. There's this guy, the invasive hybrid. It's a hybrid of 2 non-natives, Vallisneria spiralis, Vallisneria densiceriolata. One's from Africa, one's from Eurasia. There is one of the parents of this, Vallisneria spiralis, is also in the country. We have known populations in Florida and used to be one in Texas. I'm not sure if it's still there or not. And then on the west coast, there's Vallisneria australis. The real problem with this is that we don't know from previous literature which one we're dealing with. Up until about 15 years ago, there were 2 recognized taxa on the whole planet. Now there's like 18 since they've revised the phylogeny with genetic analysis. And so when we go back to look at old literature, we're not sure which species they were talking about, especially control literature. We have no idea which one they were working with. So while we're trying to understand how to control this, we're also having to rebuild the literature base regarding all those species we have in the country. So if you have something that looks like this in your water body, and it looks like it's wasn't there last year and it's doing well this year and then the next year it spreads, give us a call because we don't want you to have this. Right now, the only way to tell the difference in the 5 is through genetic analysis. If you laid them out on this table, you cannot tell one from the other. Absolute poster child for cryptic invasion processes. It's the new one I teach my students anyway. We're getting into our submerged plants, so y'all gonna have to come in behind me and check them out. This is Chara. It's not actually a plant, it's a macroalgae. Macroalgae is just an algal species that looks like a plant. The key to identifying this one is the smell. You're gonna think you got a whole handful of rotten garlic, and that's Chara. Other macroalgae don't have that smell, like Nutella, it's a native stonewort. Chara is also native, don't get me wrong, but it can be a nuisance as well. It's usually one of the first colonizers we see moved into a new system. So if we're building a new lake or we're restoring a site that's been drawn down, this stuff a lot of times will come in first. It really loves hot water. It can withstand a lot of stressors in the environment and can take off and take over a system. Again, it's native, so not all bad, but it can get out of hand when it wants to. This one looks very similar to it. I would encourage y'all to come and feel these and check them out. This is brittle naiad. This is invasive. Nias minor, yeah, I was thinking marina, that's the spiny one. Nias minor, we have it in a lot of water bodies across the southeast. It has these recurved leaves, good specimen here. The leaves come off the stem and then curve back down, and you'll see spines down it, okay? Brittle naiad. Spiny naiad has much more robust spines. We don't have any here today. But brittle naiad, the recurved leaf is the key. A lot of these, by the way, if you pick them up, the leaves go limp against the stem, drop them back in the water, and the leaves will splay back out, okay? And you'll see what they actually look like in the water. So don't just hold it in your hand and try to pick it apart. Put it in the water and see what it looks like when it opens back up. That'll really help you a lot with remembering what they look like. That guy, you'll just smell it, so that's not a problem. This is water stargrass, heteranthera species. So we have some heterantheras that are moist soil. We grow them for duck habitat. This happens to be a submerged heteranthera. I don't recall it being very problematic in the TVA system, but out in Texas and a lot of irrigation systems, it is a huge problem out there. It loves a little bit of flowing water, will take off, and it can really impede water movement through those canals. They're not able to irrigate their crops the way they need to because they can't get enough volume of water through those canals. So heteranthera, all the leaves arise off the stem. The leaves are very flat, but just about every one of them religiously, you'll see down the stem, is about 3 to 4 inches long. I mean, they don't get much longer than that. When I get to eelgrass in a minute, I don't want y'all to get mistaken, heteranthera mistaken with eelgrass, because eelgrass will have a similar looking leaf when it's young. But as eelgrass matures, the leaves get a whole lot longer, and they only come from the bottom. This actually has a stem that sticks up in the water like this, and the leaves come off the sides of it. This is Kabamba caroliniana. Again, put it in the water, look at how the leaves open up. Once you see them opened up, you'll see that it looks way different than a lot of our other submerged species we're going to get to. It's another native plant. Not real problematic in the southern states, but up into New England, it can really get out of hand, especially on the Atlantic coast. Dr. Brett Boltemeyer at University of Florida did his PhD work on understanding this plant better. We learned a lot of info from that. Most of the time in our southeastern reservoirs, we want a little bit of this. It's pretty good habitat for fish. I believe some waterfowl species will actually feed on it as well. So this is kind of one of those you want on your aquatic biota buffet out there in the water column, okay? Its closest relative, by the way, is water shield. When y'all see that in a minute, you're gonna wonder why they're so closely related, because they look nothing alike. This little guy's water meal. You see it, every little grain in there is a plant. Okay? We've got some floating here for y'all to look at and feel. That's the smallest flowering plant in the world. It is a bear to control. It's native. But every plant in there has a budding cavity with a daughter plant in it. Every daughter plant already has a budding cavity with a granddaughter plant. So when it gets out of control and we go to manage it, a lot of times if we're doing an herbicide application, we'll get the mother plant, we'll get the daughter plant, and we rarely get the granddaughter plant. So we see it bounce back very quickly. So you almost always have to do repeated control efforts to get that one under control. A lot of times we find it growing with other stuff like our duckweeds. There's a few in there, it's hard to tell, they're floating here. This is common duckweed. You know, it's another small free-floating plant, not to be mistaken with Spirodella, which is a larger duckweed. Okay, bigger fronds. They look very similar, but bigger fronds. All three of those are floating in here. So come on, look at them, poke at them if you want. The watermeal, the small grainy stuff, rub it between your fingers. It feels kind of like wet sand or grits, something like that. We have an algae here. I really didn't. One, I don't know the species of this. We have to put it under scope. But I wanted to show y'all what some of them look like that grow on the benthic, what we call the benthic algae. They're real dark. They hang out on the bottom. Later in the summer, they'll start to release fragments up to the top and form these really nasty algal mats. But your problem's not at the top. Your problem's at the bottom. So you got to be thinking how to treat the bottom to get this kind of stuff under control. I'm not sure what that was. I think my grad students just chunked the thing up. Water in there. All right, we have some really wimpy looking pennywort. All of the leaves have kind of degraded, but there's a few in here you can tell that are real small. This is one of our species. It's a perennial, but it's a winter perennial. We see the leaves and the foliage come on strong in the winter, and in the summer months it gets kind of wimpy and dies back like this. It will also form those floating islands that I was talking about, those tussocks. It loves shady habitat over in Mississippi and our oxbows where everybody likes to duck hunt. We're seeing this stuff move in under our cypress trees and really cause some big problems. It is a native species, but it's a native nuisance in some cases. I would definitely encourage y'all to learn the leaves on it. Pennywort or dollarweed, some people call it. There's two species in the country. Both of them look very, very similar. This one, I believe, is Hydrocotyle umbellata. The other is Hydrocotyle ranunculoides. That one looks like umbellata. This is water shield, another native. It's the one I told y'all was the cousin of Kabamba over there, the submerged plant. Water shield and Kabamba are both in the Combambaceae family. One of the key diagnostics of identifying this plant is one, it's got a floating leaf, it's got a red stem underneath, and then that stem will have this mucus layer. Anybody see that? It doesn't stick to your fingers, it stays on the plant. That mucus layer is protective of that stem from herbivory, but it also impedes herbicide penetration into the plant. So this one can be problematic to control. It is good fish habitat in small water bodies, but it will take off on you and form a band all the way around if it's shallow enough. So you definitely want to keep an eye on it, keep it in check. You don't want it to take over your entire littoral zone, and it will do it rapidly. The National Wildlife Refuge outside of Starkville had a huge problem with this on one of their lakes. I think it was like 800 acres that we had to reduce so that we could get the spawning habitat back for the fish in that lake. Okay, what do we got here? This is smartweed. This is a shoreline plant. One thing to note about smartweed at every node, I want y'all to look at this. I can't really show you well here. There's a membrane where the leaf leaves the stem. There'll be a membrane sticking up called an ochrea. You don't see that on other species on the landscape. If you do see it, you're dealing with a smartweed. Now there are at least a half dozen common smartweeds in the southeast. All of them will have that ochrea structure. So if you find one with that membrane, you're dealing with one of the smartweeds. They love a shoreline. I would not let them get too dense because they are a pretty good snake habitat, especially if you have little kids coming around or you have a recreational water body with a lot of visitors there. You don't want this to get out of control. A little bit is great, a lot is not so great, not so good. All right, this guy here is a primrose, Ludwigia. There's 30-something species in the world. The taxonomists are still arguing with each other on whether or not it's native to the U.S. or not, or if it's native to South America. A lot of times it's mistaken for this guy right here, which is alligator weed, which is invasive, also from South America. Alternanthera phylloxeroides is this guy. If you look at those leaves, and this guy's leaves, not a whole lot of difference, right? When you see us talk about them in presentations, we'll say green, lanceolate, or lance-shaped leaf. That kind of fits all three, right? So you can use the foliage for identifying them, but the better characteristic is to look at the stems. If you look at the stem of primrose, or smartweed for that matter, it's going to have a hollow stem. If you look at the stem of alligator weed, and when I say the stem, I mean the internode between the nodes. Alligator weed's going to be hollow. All right. Everybody see the difference? I can pass them around and look at them. Alligator weed will always be hollow. The others will not. Now don't get a small immature plant and look at it. It's going to be really hard to find. Get a good mature stem and look at that. That'll be the kicker. Moving on back to some of our lily species. This and this are both white water lily. Usually very good fish habitat. Waterfowl love to dabble in it a little bit, swim by it. Puts out these really pretty flowers. These are great. Very aromatic. This plant, I don't see any rhizome in here. Yeah, dude. When it gets out of control, it can be a pain to kill because it has that gigantic rhizome structure down there. That's a lot of nutrients there for that plant to regrow from that stressor, whether it's clipping or a chemical or digging it up. There's a lot of nutrients right here that allow this plant to just kick out new leaves. So it can be hard to control when it wants to. Most of the time, though, it's a really good species to have on your landscape or your aquascape. When it's young, though, or actually when this is young, it can be mistaken for this guy, crested floating heart. We don't have any flowers that have opened. We do have a few white little buds trying to, but crested floating heart is the one that Jens mentioned earlier in his presentation that doesn't produce viable seed that we know of. The flowers will dip back under the water after about a day, but it'll produce these little daughter plants like that. The root fragments can produce brand new plants. Even the leaves, which have veins in them. If you drop that in the water in a few days, you're going to have roots coming out of those veins. So this thing can reproduce vegetatively through multiple means. It is an absolute menace when it wants to be.
Make sure that goes back to